This is The Culture.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast. We are here with a long-anticipated video we've been waiting to make. This is going to be the state of the MCU from everything post-Avengers Endgame. We're going to be talking in detail about a lot of things that have happened over the last few years, things that we're anticipating that might happen going forward, and potentially what went wrong ever since Avengers Endgame. I'm going to be one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined by Michael Peniston.
Hello, everybody.
And a very special third host this time. This is my good buddy, PJ Bonello.
How we doing?
Good, man. Very happy that you got to come on the couch. Our first guest for a Cinema Wave podcast, so we're very excited to have you.
Yes. I feel honored.
Yeah, man. So there's a lot to talk about, guys. I do want to just address the audience, too. If you guys haven't seen all the Marvel projects up to this point, we are going to dive into spoilers heavily, so if you guys haven't seen a lot of the projects, see what you want to see. There's certain things maybe that you don't care about getting spoiled. Just prepare yourselves because we're going to talk in depth about the MCU. So the first question I wanted to start with you guys, and I'll start with you, Michael. Avengers Endgame was such a high as a fan of Marvel and a fan of comic book films and things like that.
Yes.
So to me, coming from that period, and we get the loss of such stoic like heroes within the Avengers. Half of the team disappears to some extent. Some of them pass away. Some of them we know just kind of sort of ride off into the sunset. What was your feeling about not only the MCU, but what might come after you saw Avengers Endgame?
So Avengers Endgame was definitely a high. It was experience. The movie alone was just a great experience, but also the build up to that and like everything surrounding that moment. I felt like we'll never get that moment back. And so at the time, I remember thinking like you said, what could possibly be happening next. And I know in the moment seeing it that I had already lost a little bit of hope. Just knowing that we were losing so much. And I think we all knew that, but I still had a lot of hope just because I knew that there was a lot of stuff that they hadn't touched yet. And that at that time they were actively trying to acquire a lot of rights to characters, being like the X-Men. And I think at that time, I don't know if it was for sure.
I don't think the deal was officially finalized yet.
But I think that there was still a lot of, that's been like a rumor, I feel like, for years now. And I think there were, at that time, even like the characters that they had just introduced right at that time, I felt like there was still room knowing like comic book stories for them to play with a little bit. And so it's not that I thought that it was already down or like I lost a lot of hope. I just thought that there was still a lot of room to play with and make it even grander. I thought that they hadn't even touched at that point like Galactus and the Fantastic Four and things like that. Spider-Man's story was kind of just starting at this point. And so, again, I kind of just expected them to just kind of dwell more into these characters and to kind of, through that, establish more character arcs. And honestly, outside of the movies, just continue to acquire these rights and to tie in, like, build their universe a little bit more, even outside of the screen.
PJ, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like I was more of I was a big optimist, coming off such a huge high. Endgame, I've constantly said is the greatest movie going experience of my life. It's this movie I've seen the most in theaters, which is crazy. 3 hour movie I saw it like 5 times in theaters. Nuts.
Yeah.
But I had just such faith in Feige, in the MCU coming off of Phase 3, which I think a lot of those projects we can kind of agree on were great. Mm-hmm. That was kind of a high point for them. That I was like, in my head, I'm like, can't do no wrong. I think we've talked about this before, where at that point I was like, I trust them to kind of do whatever they want at this point. Like you saw how the Guardians worked, and everyone coming into that was like, oh no, these are D-list characters, they can't do them right, blah blah blah. And they're one of the most beloved franchise in the entire MCU. So when you hear projects like a Shang-Chi, even like a Moon Knight or any of these other kind of characters that are less known, I was like, okay, I've seen them do this before. I have faith that they can make it as good. And we'll obviously go into all these projects.
Yeah.
Like you said, seeing guys like Iron Man, Cap, Widow, all of them kind of leaving, I still felt like, all right, we have Spider-Man, we have Doctor Strange, we have Black Panther, we have all these heavier hitters that they kind of built up. that was like, okay, we can take that into this next phase, and those will be the flagship guys, and I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, there were the three that you just mentioned, and to a different extent, for in terms of like, I don't know how we all feel in general about Brie Larson's portrayal of Captain Marvel, but the franchise itself was very successful. It grossed $1 billion. So between Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Strange, you felt like you still had a really great future nucleus of what an Avengers team could look like, while still having Thor, while still having Hulk, still having Clint, introducing all these other characters. And we knew we still had Wanda. Like, there were other characters that, like you said, there were ways you could have played within it. And my own personal experience too, coming off Endgame, like, I wasn't a huge fan of the original Doctor Strange movie. I think it's a decent film, but in terms of like the larger scale of some of these movies, I don't love it. But Strange in the Avengers movies, I thought like was a whole nother step up. And then obviously, like you were talking about with Tom Holland's portrayal of Peter, the thing with that is so complicated, obviously, if you don't know this already, Sony owns the rights to that character. So it's really about if and when Sony decides, okay, Marvel, we'll play nice, you can have them. And that makes it complicated, because I think if you look, so like if you think DC, you have the two heroes, obviously you have Batman, you have Superman. That's usually what people can, like when they hear the brand of DC, those are the people they immediately sort of cling on to. Spider-Man is Marvel. And the fact that Disney's Marvel doesn't own the rights to Spider-Man and his characters is a huge obstacle for them in general. So having him, Panther, Strange, Captain Marvel, other characters on the periphery, you would have thought, okay, they're just going to continue on, that they have a nucleus, they have a chemistry, that it just works the way they make these movies, and they're just going to keep going. Then we get into the Disney Plus of it all. And I think that, at least for me personally, this is where things start to get very complicated, and it gets confusing, because it's like, well, part of it is the creative side of it, but then it's the business side, right? Like, this is at a time where Netflix is the biggest thing happening around this time. I think Disney Plus launched in like 2000, I guess it was 2018, 19?
I think it was 19.
Yeah, so which, again, that's the year Endgame comes out in theaters. So at that time, you're having this streaming service, you're launching with Mandalorian, and Bob Iger's like, yeah, we have all these shows that are coming that revolve around all these Marvel characters. And at first, like I'm sure you guys felt similarly, you're like, this is awesome, more Marvel stuff, like this is great. But I think that the quantity of the amount of things they were putting themselves into and energy they're putting themselves into, I mean, they were firing on all cylinders when they were releasing 2 or 3 movies a year. And that was all they were doing. Then you go from that to potentially some years you have 4 movies and 5 or 6 TV shows. And it starts to get, you start to look around and you're like, it's making sense to me why this is not fitting together. Like, you're seeing CGI out of place. You're seeing sort of storylines that are not interconnecting. And do you want interconnectivity? How many projects through these phases? And again, we'll get to the Jonathan Majors part of it, but it's like, even Kang to this point through like 14 projects has only been in like 3 things. And Thanos wasn't like that either, but it is confusing, because it's like, all right, so are they continuing on the interconnectivity sort of way that they were, or are they restarting, like similar to how like when Iron Man first came out, Fury was in it, but it didn't eventually lead into things until you started to see things sort of play out. So I guess my big roundabout way of asking you guys is like, from that point, what do you think went wrong? Like, what was it for you guys that reached to a point, and PJ, we'll start with you, like a certain thing where you were like, this feels different than how I felt, even despite like maybe seeing a lackluster project, like maybe like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, I don't love that movie, but when I walked out of it, I was just like, yeah, it just wasn't a great Marvel movie. I didn't look at it like what's going on. So what was that moment for you? Post Endgame, I guess. Well,
The main problem in my eyes is just the lack of interconnectivity, kind of like what we were saying. And I think I kind of saw that most in Quantumania. That was, and which is crazy, because that was the movie that kind of was supposed to push that connectivity, the main Kang movie, and it just never kind of felt that way to me. And I've seen that and on the projects after that, especially with like Secret Invasion too. Everything just felt like a mess. And then once I saw all those projects, I went back and just thought of all these other things, like the Shang-Chi, no, not the Marvels, because that was after that, but all these other projects before that, and I'm like, man, there's really nothing that this movie has to do with this movie, and movie C has to do with movie D. And some of the best parts of Marvel for me was that, oh my god, this happened in this movie. Let me go back and rewatch this. That's what creates the rewatchability. And we were talking about this before we started, that I haven't really gone back, and you said that too, DJ, that I haven't gone back and kind of rewatched these movies. Like I used to go and see these movies at least twice in theaters.
Yeah, I was similar.
And the only movie I've done that for post Endgame, I did it with Spider-Man, and I did it with Quantumania just because I was so excited for that movie. And I talked about I'm not the biggest like comic reader, but since I got into Marvel and whatnot, I've always dove in, watched like cartoons, watched some comics, and just like read up. I love Kang. I loved that character. So I was like, I gotta just go back and rewatch it, because even coming out of that, I wasn't like, this is terrible. It's like, man, I was disappointed.
That's how I felt too.
Yeah.
For Quantumania, for sure.
I was like, I did go back and rewatch it again with my dad, because he hadn't seen it, and I just felt kind of the same way as I did coming out of that first and second time. Like, I'm just kind of disappointed, but I went back the second time to be like, I just gotta see. I gotta see if there was something just up with that first one. Maybe my expectations were a little bit too high. I kind of know what I'm getting into, and I just felt the same way coming out of that second time. So I'd say what's wrong is the interconnectivity and things just happening with no real follow-up.
Gotcha. Michael?
So I'd say for me, what went wrong with it all, I feel like I actually really liked at first when they were the whole push into Disney Plus, because I think that was like the immediately following Endgame was like what was it?
Yeah, I think WandaVision was the first thing, and then it was Black Widow, and then or it might have been WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, and then Black Widow. Yeah, so you got 2 shows before you got their next movie.
And so I appreciated that. I appreciated more in the sense of I could tell the direction that Marvel was going at the time was just experimenting in creatively the different visuals that they could do, and like I was kind of appreciating just like them taking that leap and experimenting it a little bit more. For me, what really did it, and I hate to say it because I do feel like after a rewatch, I actually really do like this movie. It was when we got to Eternals. I don't remember what point really in terms of all the releases were coming out, but when we got to Eternals, first watch, I didn't really enjoy Eternals. I think for me, that's when I fully realized that they were that's when the quantity thing was really starting to become a thing, but not even quantity, even with their characters, it was starting to become an issue. And I think that coming off of these previous phases, the way that we were getting these sort of individual releases every so often so that we could really sit with these characters. And also there wasn't too many characters to work with at that time. And so like in like an earlier phase, I feel like there was still room to, I guess, going into these stories connecting. There was still a little bit more room to breathe with these characters and to sit and to kind of evaluate a lot of this stuff. But when we got to Eternals, at that point, I think that not only were they already dwelling into, it was this. I think that was the moment, and even outside the movies themselves, where like they were really starting to announce what they were trying to do a little bit more for the future. And so at that point we were hearing like, oh, not only are we really focusing on some of the stories that we've seen with the characters already, but we're about to get a lot of characters.
Yeah.
And Eternals alone, I felt like was a lot of characters.
Well, yeah, there's 8. Is there 8 people in the Eternals? It might be.
I think it's 8.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's why I couldn't really appreciate it, because then it's like you're already now having to learn 8 new characters in one movie, whereas the other ones you could sit with one character and then like, oh, they appeared in another movie where like you could build up to it. And so that for me, that's where I noticed the fall off. It was like there were way too many characters.
it's more than that.
It's more than 8.
It's 10, and that's also that's not including like Kit Harington's character of Dane Whitman. And that's like the whole cast, obviously, besides like the villain. But like still, you're getting an introduction of 10 characters. Yeah, 2, 4,
plus
6.
Like,
oh wait,
are you including like
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9, 10.
Are you including like the whole Harry Styles cameo too?
No.
I want to do that.
So you have Cersei, Gemma Chan's character, Icarus, Richard Madden, Kingo is Kumail Nanjiani, Sprite, Liam McHugh, Brian Tyree Henry's Phastos, Makari, Druig, Gilgamesh, Ajak, Athena. 10 characters in one movie.
That's the
That's a really great
That's
point.
right.
No, I think I'm on I know I'm on the latter side, that I actually enjoy Eternals,
Yeah, no, I do now.
but
Not at first.
I do 100% agree with you, and I've never looked at it that way, where it's like, I can't even imagine what it's like to just get 10 new characters thrown in your face immediately. Like, and it's not like a regular type of movie, like something where you're watching something where it's a true story and you're starting to learn about who these people are, and there's a lot more character development. But it's like, these are 10 heroes that all have very distinct abilities, and all of them have their own backstory, but we don't have enough time to dive into all of them, so we're going to kill off some of them, and then it's not even going to matter that we introduce them. And it starts to get very convoluted, and the crazy thing is that's a movie that's 3 hours long, so or 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're still not able to fit that much into it, similar to what like we were talking about Vinny the other day, it's like, how do you have that much of a runtime on something and you're not able to formulate a better film, like, and be able to dive into some of these things? What did you think about Eternals?
I was gonna say, we just gonna talk about Eternals?
Yeah, we could jump into Eternals.
Yeah,
I do think it's a good point. And then I actually, before we go into Eternals, I have one other question for the both of you, because I know you brought up interconnectivity and your idea is a little bit different, but this was something that I was thinking about a lot recently. Do we think that they're too self-reliant on interconnectivity? Like, I understand that, like, again, DC now is operating in this world of, like, they're going to eventually have this now very distinct, like, Matt Reeves has his Batman universe, and Todd Phillips already has his different types of Joker, and now we're going to have James Gunn's interconnected sort of thing. But they're going to still be available to do things like Elseworlds, like Swamp Thing. I think is supposed to be something that's not going to be connected to the giant world of what James Gunn and Peter Safran are building. Do we think that, especially going into like the multiverse saga, where you genuinely can start to experiment with doing things that have no interconnectivity, do we think Marvel has become too self-reliant on and maybe us as fans have become too self-reliant on the fact that everything needs to connect? PJ, you can start if you want.
Yeah, I could see that you kind of use it as a crutch to make everything like, oh, you have to come see this now because it's connected to everything, and it makes the viewer have to go see everything. But another kind of larger issue when I said interconnectivity that I think with the MCU is that they're going halfway with it. What I mean with that is, you brought up like the Harry Styles character in the Eternals. It's one of my, I didn't think it would be the only person in this panel here to really dislike the Eternals. Just because it embodies a lot of what I think is going wrong right now.
Yeah.
But they just introduced Harry Styles. They introduced Pip the Troll, which is who was he playing?
It's Patton Oswalt.
Patton Oswalt.
Yeah.
I love Patton Oswalt, but wild. They introduced Black Knight. They had Blade. They had Mahershala Ali's Blade
Voice in the post.
The voice in the post credit.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? They've introduced all these things. We've seen nothing. There has been no follow-up whatsoever. There is a giant Eternal poking his head out of the earth, and it has not been mentioned in
That's the
2
yeah.
years.
That's the big thing that it's like, and literally and figuratively, it's just like this giant figure is sticking out of the ground, and no Avenger or other hero has been referenced to it whatsoever.
There's not even like a passing, unless I'm forgetting something, there's not even like a passing TV spot in the background that's like, oh, this is
I forget what movie, it might be Quantumania, but because I remember seeing it, there's like a scroll on the bottom of a newscast where it says like giant celestial found in the middle of the ocean, or it's like, and it's literally something as simple as that, but even that is not something that's gonna excite a viewer of like, oh, like there's a callback to that. It's definitely not similar to what we got in the first 3 phases.
Yeah. And like you said, and going back to your original question of, are they too reliant on interconnectivity? Like I said, yes, in a way, because they use it as a crutch to get everyone to watch everything else. But they're not doing it as they were in the first 3 phases, where you would introduce someone and you don't have to have them show up in the next project immediately. You just have to have everyone be aware that they're in the universe now, and they're just not doing that now. So they're kind of half-assing it.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah,
Michael?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree, just because there have been so many storylines that they've just teased now at this point. It's ridiculous. I do think that they are leaning heavily into that, and they are, like you said, using it as a crutch. I also believe, sadly enough to say, a big reason for that is the home push of Disney Plus. I do believe that they've used it as a business crutch too, in order to drive viewers to Disney Plus.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
And so, like, because of that, and honestly, there's a whole argument that you can make that business is kind of ruined, not only just kind of Marvel, but Disney to a degree, because they become so like money hungry with certain things, and just business is taking over the creative side. I feel like for sure. And so I feel like yes, they are, but it just stems in just a whole sort of web of the corporation itself, you know, and like different arguments you could make. But I do think that they're using it as a crutch. I even think that down to like Easter eggs, like you said, with the whole Eternals thing, like little small things that they think that they can get away with, because in the past it's been like a fun sort of thing for fans to be like, oh, let me go back and now find these Easter eggs and stuff. Like I think that the fandom has also kind of amplified that to it in its extent. And that's not our fault. Like obviously we're just being fans. We're, you know, they put it in our faces. Why not do it? Exactly. Yes. But it's also, again, they used it and implemented it also into a business factor as well, which is a bad thing.
Two things that we can dive into, and then we'll jump into like kind of breaking every project down as much as we can, as quickly as we can. The multiverse saga in general. So that gets announced eventually. I think a couple projects into what this phase is. I think it wasn't until Comic-Con. So I think we still had things out at that point before we got that reveal, wasn't it? Because Comic-Con wasn't in 2020. So they waited to reveal it. Yeah. Like we still had we had WandaVision, we had Falcon Winter Soldier, we had Black Widow, Loki, and I think Shang-Chi, and then I think they announced that we're going to do the multiverse saga, and that's when they like introduced Jonathan. Well, no, because Jonathan Majors was introduced before Loki, and he was introduced on stage at Comic-Con before Loki, right? Okay, I believe so. Yeah. So I'm mistaken on that, but the multiverse saga in general, when you heard that they were going to do that, and the opportunity that they have currently, I guess still, but had in terms of the way they could have handled it up until this point. How do you feel about it? Because it's like when you look at Kang the Conqueror as a character, he's so complex, and there's so many different, like, think about if you just look at it at face value, it's like you have this guy that can control space and time, who is in so many different ways, different versions of who he is. And Thanos, like, as great as a villain as he is, and a terrific performance by Josh Brolin, obviously, he's just a big purple dude that just wants to collect stones. Like, it's very simple. Like, the character itself is simplistic, and Jonathan Majors, now he's obviously out of playing the role, but he was someone that brought so much nuance to that role, and you see it in the first season of Loki, you see it in the second season of Loki that just came out. Excuse me. And you don't see it as much in Quantumania. That's kind of the Conqueror version. Yeah. But the flashback scenes, I think you really dive into who he is, and I think there's a good job there. But the multiverse saga in general, Michael, like where are you at with it? What did you think when you first heard it? Were you excited? Were you worried? Skeptical?
I was super excited, honestly. I feel like how could you not? There's so much that you could play with. I think we all knew that. I think maybe in the back of our heads we knew like the risk of like that could be really big, but at the time it wasn't that big. It was also still fairly new at that point. It wasn't like we've seen it on screen a lot, but it was like new, like in terms of just like cinematography, like the word of cinema, I guess you could say. And I think that was also one of Marvel's sort of they ruined it for themselves with this whole delaying and slow sort of, and quantity over quality, with it taking as long as they've had. I feel like when they first announced it and established it as being something, what was that, 2020 you said?
Yeah, 2019, 2020, around there, yeah.
That was at a time where it was still like, again, like a kind of new concept in film, and they've been dragging their feet on it, forgetting that they're also a high business that probably everybody takes a lot of inspiration from. And since then, we've seen the multiverse in so many projects outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I have it written here. Everything Everywhere All at Once literally won an Academy Award for Best Picture, taking their concept and perfecting it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And so now it's been milked, and it's been done so much that it's almost like like we've had this conversation so many times in this studio
Yeah.
about how like it's just we've seen it so much, like how what else can they really do with it? And it's like it's I don't know, it's been way too much thrown in our face. I feel like it's lost its spunk. It's lost its sort of
luster.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so at a time where it was new, it was very exciting. Now it's like, okay, like it's still there's. I feel like we're as fans, we will always, no matter what, have a little bit of curiosity and hope. Just because there's still kind of some good in certain things, like we talked about. And so, I don't know. I feel like there is that curiosity of like, oh, what could we see? There are characters we haven't seen yet. Like, what could come? But again, it's been thrown in our face so much. It's like, do we really need to do it?
Yeah,
It's like,
no, for sure.
I think that's a great point. That there's just so much multiverse, and you like you said you can do it well. You can do everything everywhere all at once. Loved it.
Spider-Verse, yeah,
phenomenal. Then like you have kind of an attempt like The Flash, and it's like that just didn't work.
Yeah,
It's not good.
Yeah.
But when I first heard of the multiverse, like I said before, I love the idea of Kang. I love one of my favorite things that's like in comics is just the unlimited possibility to do kind of anything, and that's kind of what the multiverse feels like to me. You can do anything. You can be very creative in it. So I was very, very, very excited when they announced the multiverse, and it's just been confusing.
Yeah,
It's just been. I think that's just the right word. And I would hear people in other stuff too, in other projects like my dad.
yeah.
Just an older dude likes it. Won't go as in depth. A lot of stuff he's like, oh, it's confused. Like, oh, I can just explain it to you. It's not that confusing. When he asks like about like the multiverse and Kang, I'm like, I'm a little stumped here. This is a little confusing to me too. Just kind of how they're doing it, how they're trying to connect it. And I do think that there's still a way you can save it. Can I take that right off the bat? There's some bits and pieces I can, but
Yeah.
It can still work. The possibility of seeing all these other, the Fox X-Men. We saw it in No Way Home too, with the Tobey and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, which was awesome at the time when that prospect was out there. One of the most hyped theater experiences too. Like I said, Endgame is my best theater experience. No Way Home is probably number 2.
Yeah.
That was incredible, and that was the possibility of the multiverse being shown to me. But I don't know.
Well, like Multiverse of Madness is another example of where
They could have done so much more with that.
Yeah, so and I like what you were saying, because the thing is, it just the word multiverse opens up so many possibilities and opportunities to do different things. And what I really despise Marvel for right now is the fact that they're not taking the creative liberties to actually make it something that fans can be excited about, that also has a really great through line and emotionality to what's happening with the characters. Like Multiverse of Madness to me is one of the few in these two phases that I've gone back and I've seen it 3 times now. But the thing is, every time I watch that movie, I like it less. And that's usually not the case with Marvel movies. There are usually things that in the past you'll see something and you're like, wow, I can't believe I didn't pick up on that Easter egg for so long, and that interconnectivity. And I didn't see it from this perspective, but now I'm seeing it from a different character's perspective. Multiverse of Madness, I mean, it's in the title. It's like, it's something where they want to prep you for something that you've never seen before, and we're going to jump into all these universes. You get a 3-minute scene, which is beautifully done, by the way.
Looks awesome.
But you get a 3-minute scene where you just throw Steven through multiple universes, and then he lands in one. And they're like, all right, we're going to be here for half the movie. And it's like, why did they do that? Like, why would you do it that way?
You know what that kind of reminds me of in X-Men Origins Wolverine? When just the opening scene, it's Wolverine and Sabretooth going through all the wars. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. This could be like the movie. And it's just that's
And then it's dog shit for the rest of the movie. I know. That is a great opening to a really bad movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's something that like I'm similar to you guys. Like when I first heard of multiverse, and because I think at that point Into the Spider-Verse had come out, and that was such a unique concept and the way they were doing it that way. And the fact that you had a creative entity like Feige, and the only worry at that point, I guess, is like, who are your filmmakers that were going to head that? But I also feel like, to an extent, Marvel's been hit with a lot of really bad luck. And you look at all the bad things that have come at like a very short period of time. It's like for a very long time. I mean, Marvel wasn't without their issues. There was the Terrence Howard going from Iron Man to Iron Man 2. I know that Patty Jenkins for a long time was attached to Thor: The Dark World, and that became an issue, and then she got fired. Edgar Wright was supposed to do Ant-Man. They recasted Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, which is the most obvious example. So they had issues throughout, right? But then they had like a really good streak of like no issues happening. Then there were things that obviously were out of people's control. I mean, you leave Endgame and then less than a year later you have the obvious unfortunate loss of Chadwick Boseman, who like Black Panther. I mean, just the movie Black Panther was the first Marvel movie ever nominated for Best Picture. Like there was a lot that came with that story and that character and the cultural impact that had. Then again, there's the Tom Holland of it all, and that the fact that the rights to this character he's playing, Disney doesn't own. So you don't know what's going to happen with that. We talked a little bit off camera about Falcon Winter Soldier. That was a show that when it was built, they were 90% through filming, and then the big antagonistic ploy was that the villains, the Flag Smashers, were supposed to spread a virus across the world, and this was during a time where coronavirus was happening, so Marvel had to go back and scrap that and refilm about 70% of it. It wound up costing them $125 million. Like, a lot of these things, and now forget the Jonathan Majors part, which we'll get to in a minute, but there was so much that was coming at a time where it was like, I don't really know how to play this. Like, where are we going to go? Like, it felt like every single time one thing was going wrong. And even sometimes where it's like, when you, as fans, you're like, oh, well, this felt better than the last one did. Like, the most recent example, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, as of right now, is in my top 10 films of the year. The Marvels, in my opinion, is the second worst movie Marvel has ever made. And that's not a Brie Larson thing. I just think the movie is dog shit. It's like, I'm just not a fan of it. And I think the characters' chemistry is great. But when they're not on screen together, everything else about the movie I really, really despise. So it's like, at some point, when are they going to be able to get their feet again? Like, get their feet from under them? Like, what's going to happen? And then Jonathan Majors, which I guess we can talk about to a fuller extent now, you cast this fantastic young up-and-coming actor who a lot of people were unaware of who he was when they cast him as Kang, but people were still like, yeah, like, he seems like a good actor, whatever. And then you see him as He Who Remains in Loki, and you're like, holy shit, did they make the right decision? And then you see him in other indie movies, and then you see him as the villain in Creed 3, and he's fantastic in that. And then you can see him even more recently in season 2 of Loki, which we did a lot of reviews for that, Michael. We were very big fans of the way Jonathan Majors was in that show.
Very big fan.
And he has this huge public trial, and he gets charges thrown his way, and now he's out. He's not playing Kang the Conqueror anymore. We don't know if Kang is still going to continue. The other hard thing with that is that Marvel named a film after his character. So that puts you in a very awkward position. And luckily they haven't been in this sort of situation with a hero. This is a villain. Like, it's not like luckily Chris Hemsworth wasn't doing anything that would put him in prison. But it's like, it's just, we're in a crazy point as fans. So it's like, where do you go from here? Like, well, like, where do you go from where they're at currently and still try to save it? And I want to ask, because you're like, I still think there's a way that we can do it. Do you have, and I know there's some things you said you can answer, some things you can't.
Yeah.
If it were up to you, how would you proceed in the near term?
Unless there's, you guys might know this better than I could. Is there a clause in Jonathan Majors' contract where no one could play Kang other than? Because I thought I read that.
I know you mentioned that to me, and I have no idea if that's real or not.
I don't know if that's real or not.
I thought I read that somewhere.
That would be crazy though.
Could be right.
I will look into it as you talk. But
if this is true or not, what I read was that they saw him in Loki season 1 and were blown away by him, which a lot of us were. I loved it. And they were like, we're just going to full in on him. And credit on his part as a multiversal character like that who can be played, he can kind of be played by anyone. So in his mind, it's like, oh, I don't want to go up against myself and this other character. So putting that in his contract is a justifiable thing in my head. But if that's not the case, if that's not in there, or if it was in there and the other legal stuff makes that void, I still think Kang could work. I still think that he can. You just gotta just tighten it up. I think you just gotta focus a lot of you just kind of gotta focus on one thing is what's coming, is what I think. I think that they were trying to set up so many other things, like trying to set up like the Midnight Suns, the Young Avengers. I think that if you just try and focus on this multiversal war, this multiversal story arc, it can still work. You just gotta kind of drive a lot of the stuff towards that. You find that?
Yeah, so it's not very reliable sources, so I don't know exactly.
So
Like,
I'm just talking about my ass.
but no. I see it. Like, you can find it on Google pretty easily. But they're saying that another part of it is like if you're technically fired and it's due to the fact that like there's he was arrested and indicted on charges and things like that. Like that might
like a
annul the
arrest.
contract. Exactly. Yeah. But then there's other contracts where it could be like it doesn't even matter. It's like it's like you sign for what you sign for. And I mean, all these actors, because they're talking about how all these actors, obviously, when they sign on for these projects, they have multiple movies. Like that's been the big thing with Marvel things. Like I remember after Civil War, Sebastian Stan's contract was like up, and then he was like, "Yeah, I just signed on to do like 8 more." And it's like, that's crazy. What do you mean 8 more? Like, how can they even fucking fit you in 8 more projects? So I don't know exactly to the extent of that. But I also do agree with you. You can take Kang a certain way, but if that clause exists, I mean, you're completely screwed. Yeah. And the thing is, they've, at least in the public side, like reports on Deadline and things like that, like they're just calling it Avengers 5 now. So as of right now, that'll change. They'll give it a subtitle. But if that's the case, it's like, all right, well then that seems pretty.
That's a good indicator.
Yeah, it's pretty divisive or concise that they're just gonna do away with the Kang storyline. The thing is, like, do you now set yourself up to be in a bad position to pick a whole new villain midway through a phase? And like they're gonna go Doom, right?
Which I don't like that because it's just gonna feel rushed. I think Doom is such a major character that you can build you can build an entire saga around him, and I think they should. So I wouldn't want them to just hastily get him in there just because we need a villain. Which is why I'm very much like just continue on Kang if you can, but I've been trying to think of like any other villain you could do because it very much seems like they're just kind of going to do away with Kang.
Yeah.
At this point.
Do you think that if they add projects in and start to push the Avengers films more, because as of right now, I think they already pushed the Avengers films again, so I think that we're not going to get our next Avengers movie until I think it's 2026, which would be 7 years since Endgame, which I think would be the biggest gap between Avengers movies, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because it was 12 for the first one, 15 for Ultron, and then 18 for Infinity War.
Yeah, so like every 3 years it was happening, and that'll. I mean, if it comes out 2026, we're already looking at 7 years. Now, if you start to push at 27, 28, you're looking at close to 10 years. Now, I think I would hope, as a fan, I could be patient if they start to right the ship the right way. But do you think that they would go that route? I mean, I can't imagine they would, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Think so.
Michael, what do you think about the whole Kang situation and where they can potentially go from here?
Oh man, I'm hurt. We did lose a good character arc. I do know that it could have for sure built up to something. I agree that they would probably do Doom and like a quick event. And I don't want that either. It just seems again like a safety crutch for them, which they're relying on. I do feel like if they could recast, that really is not a bad option. I know a lot of people, including myself, have been saying this whole John Boyega argument should play him.
I heard he doesn't want to play him.
Yeah, I'm not surprised just because I know like his bad blood with Disney because of Star Wars, and so I wouldn't blame him obviously for something like that. I do think that there is room to play with Kang. I know that there was rumor that they were setting him up to potentially, I don't know which variant of him would have been that, but they were setting him up to become the Beyonder, who in the comments I know is like one of like the worst, I guess, villains that you could go up against. Yeah. And that would have been really cool to see. I do think that would have been cool. But I mean, if that whole clause thing is true, which is news to me, then like they for sure are just like, that's it. Yeah. We can't really argue with that. I don't know. I feel like if like you said, they're calling it Avengers 5 as of now, and I remember hearing that like they were done, and if you see like all over the news like Jonathan Majors is fired, and like I would think that like that character
Just kind of trying to wipe away.
Yeah, you know, knowing Marvel and like they've kind of I don't know if they've done that. I know that they've recast it in the past, but like I don't know.
It just like wiping a character is not something that they're known for doing.
Yeah, but like again, this is like you said, like a villain as opposed to a hero.
Yeah.
So it's such greater state that like I could see them having to change what they would do. I also don't know what superhero villain that would next be other than Doom. Unfortunately,
Beyonder's not a bad one because he is a major part of like Secret Wars.
mm-hmm.
So you can very much just kind of try and tie it into that. Like he is from the kind of minimal I know of the character, I just know that he is a big part of Secret Wars.
And that's not a Loki. That's not a Kang variant in the comics.
No,
right? It's a different character. So they were going to merge them together to be this thing. I think.
I remember a big rumor was that the Kang in Quantumanium was supposed to become the Beyonder, and that he didn't actually die. Yeah, like,
interesting.
And so like that concept, I was like, oh, wait, that could have been kind of cool.
But they're gonna have a lot to rework.
Yeah, I do also though, just because how you started that with like the whole bad luck thing. I do think that a big part of their luck that we aren't really talking about a lot of that has always been a gamble for them is the directors that they're choosing for a lot of these projects. I feel like that'll transition into a lot because there's a lot I could actually say to this whole question, low key, and a lot of things parts like especially with like the whole Multiverse of Madness. Like rewatching that again, I could look back and see like, oh, this is for sure like a how am I drawing?
Sam Raimi movie.
This is a Sam Raimi movie for sure. And like to a degree, like I love Sam Raimi. I love his movies. But I'm like looking back like, oh snap, should he have been the one to you know what I'm saying, to do this in certain places? And so I do think that that's a gamble. We've seen such good directors put out some good projects. And in the past, I feel like they were recycling directors. Like Joss Whedon was like kind of
Joss Whedon,
like a lot of their projects. I feel and the Russo brothers, you know. And so now they're like they were tapping. That was a gamble themselves, tapping into those directors. So that's in their luck as well. But I mean, I feel like, and this I can transition into at some point into the conversation. James Gunn alone, I feel like he was a great director. And again, I know that that's a big conversation that we could talk about and that we probably will get into at some point.
I think we should start to dive into the projects, and because there's so many, I think I'll just say like 3 of them, and then we'll start to just pick apart what we want to talk about because there's so much to cover. Right? Because I'm looking at the list and I'm like, we've already probably been recording for like 35 minutes. Like, there's no way we're getting through all this shit right now. So, all right, let's start with and I'm going movies, and then we'll go into TV. So we'll start movies, Phase 4. So these were the order in which the movies came out. So you have Black Widow, you have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, you have Eternals, you have Spider-Man No Way Home. We'll stop it at 4. All right, so PJ, I'll allow you to take the floor, and any of those 4 films that you want to discuss, positives, negatives, things that you enjoyed, things that made you think.
I'll start off with Black Widow because I literally just watched it.
Yeah, right before you came into record.
Yeah, enjoyable movie. The entire time I watched that movie, I'm just like, this should have came out in 2016. This should have came out like 2017, right after Civil War. It just feels out of place, but like a very solid. It was a good. I remember going to see it in theaters because I was the first movie to come out post or after the COVID hit. So I was like, oh, this is enjoyable. It's a little disconnected a little bit just because it feels like it should have been released earlier, but you know, you introduce a good character in Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova. I thought she was really good. You had the David Harbour as the Red Guardian, good, infused with a lot of that MCU comedy that kind of gets a little much sometimes when you overdo it. It's circa Thor: Love and Thunder. But in overall, no major issues except for some CGI stuff that we were talking about before, the explosion at the end of the movie. But a very safe, enjoyable first movie back.
Yeah. I think that I really like, and we talked a little bit right before we started recording, of how gritty the opening of that film feels. Yes. It feels like it's like one of the darker approaches. I mean, not only the scene, like the escape scene on the plane, but the whole opening title sequence feels like you're watching like an episode of The Americans. Like it's like you're like, what is happening right now? Like it's the Cold War, and you're seeing all these crazy historical artifacts within, and that's the type of stuff in the MCU that worked so well, because it's like they're actually connecting like historical events to our Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you're seeing how all of that affected Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova and their family with Red Guardian and Rachel Weisz's character. And Black Widow I enjoy, but I think that whole back third of the movie, when you have the big action sequence, especially when they're like falling, to me, so much of that scene, I remember I was sitting there and I was like, I can't believe this movie was released in 2020, because they're like, it just reminds me so much of like, it's so obvious that they're like on a soundstage and they're just like blowing air in their faces. And I don't know where that came from, because again, it's a movie that was released during COVID and it went to Disney Plus. It wasn't even in theaters, right? It was in theaters. Okay. So, it was the first one back.
Yeah. I remember seeing it in theaters.
Yes. Okay. And I saw it in theaters too, but for some reason I thought they did like,
I thought like a short release,
like a short Disney Plus premiere, and then put it in theaters, maybe
something like that. Yeah.
And there was a huge issue with that film with like Scarlett Johansson and pay and what was supposed to happen with that. So there was a lot of controversy surrounding that movie too. First thing off of Endgame, but I thought it was just a decent film. But I appreciated a lot of what they did in the beginning of that movie. Like I thought they did a really, and I do agree with you. Like in terms of placement, like I understood they had it planned for that movie to come out, and it would have been more in succession, but it was just like, man, this movie takes place right after Civil War. Like, why is it coming out 4 years after Civil War was released? It felt really out of place.
I was gonna say, kind of tough placement to have that be the first movie. Well, I guess Spider-Man Far From Home was, but the first movie of this new phase, you want to kind of push forward, and okay, we're right in the middle of Civil War, or right after Civil War. It's like, it just felt weird.
Yes, for sure. Michael?
Still going with
Black Widow, yeah, and then after that you can transition into one of the other movies that I mentioned.
Yeah, sure. If I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched Black Widow since the first watch. Actually, I think I rewatched some of it, not recently. But I agree with the argument that it should have been released a long time ago. It should have been released. We should have seen that story. I don't know how they would have worked certain storylines, considering I know a lot of those characters are set up for future Marvel events now. So I don't know if it would
like Yelena and Red Guardian.
Yeah, and so I don't know how it would have been kind of like then if it was, and then to have to wait for those storylines now. But I still think it was weird placement to have dropped. Another big thing for me was I did have for sure that cinema release for a short amount of time, but that was one of their first big streaming pushes for sure.
Yeah.
So I remember watching that for the first time at home. And that was for sure, like that was my first, I guess you could say, at home Marvel movie experience. I guess. And I think that had to do with a lot of that experience with the film for me. Let me start off by saying I didn't really like that movie. To be honest, I didn't really like it. I liked the characters that they kind of set up. And like where it could go, but I felt like it was like kind of pointless to a degree, and maybe a lot of that was placement that it came out. But I feel like a big part of it is also that whole at home viewing experience. And it was a quick sort of. It wasn't what I was expecting to be like the jump off of that Endgame high. I appreciate to a degree them deciding to start that off, considering that was like an OG, and so like it made sense to give her that sort of first introduction into it. But again, it should have happened a long time ago, and so I'll say that to it. That's my piece with Black Widow. Shang-Chi and Eternals were okay, but I definitely think we should talk about Spider-Man No Way Home.
All right, let's jump into No Way Home.
That played a
so
big
go
role.
ahead. The floor is yours.
I feel like that movie was a long time coming. To a certain degree, I feel like so many of the fans had been arguing that they wanted that for a while, and that was the first time I feel like Marvel truly listened. It was nice to see it. It all happened in terms of the nostalgia of it all. It was nice. I feel like each of the Spider-Men played their roles the way that they should. Even the villains played the roles that they needed to. But I will say that now, coming off of that experience, that high of being in it, that movie, I think, is as good as it is because of the nostalgia. If you take that away, it's not really that good of a movie. It's like a good movie, but it's not like it's an amazing Spider-Man.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah,
I think that's a movie that it's hard, and this is what I think about when I think about like that comparatively to like Endgame, which I agree with you, PJ. Like first movie theater experience of seeing No Way Home was incredible. Like top 5 experience for me. Endgame is probably either 1 or 2 for me. But there's something that I keep returning to Endgame, even though I know everything that's going to happen. And there are moments, and I actually had it written in my notes of something that separates like the MCU, though I do love the MCU, and this kind of goes with the interconnectivity and visual styles and directing too. But like, I've seen The Dark Knight probably 30 times in my life, and there's not a Marvel movie that I've seen 30 times. Even though I love Endgame, I probably haven't seen it 30 times. Dark Knight has such a very distinctive, like there are moments and there are scenes and there are visuals that I can always return to because of the care that was put in that by Nolan as a director. Mm-hmm. The thing with the MCU, and at least again, like comparatively No Way Home to Endgame, it's like they have audience moments that make you want to go like, oh my God, that's so cool. But then every single time you see it again, you're like, oh yeah, there's that scene. It's not like the scene, like again, like the visual of like Batman like standing on the rubble after the explosion, that silhouette of the cowl, and like that's distinctive, and that's something that like I can just put myself back in that universe. And with Endgame, it's like, yeah, I get it. Cap, he asks for the hammer and he gets the hammer. It's awesome. It's an incredible scene when you see it for the first time. Cap on your left, I get it. It sends chills down your spine, but it doesn't hit the same. Like it doesn't feel like you're seeing something new and distinct every time you watch these movies. No Way Home, I think, fires 1000% on the fact that whole movie is based in the experiences that other audience members had with all these different Spider-Men and all these different villains. And if they're not in the movie, or if you again take away the nostalgia of what that is, it's not great. It's not as good as, like, in my mind. Like I still, it's probably my favorite Spider-Man movie besides the Spider-Verse ones. Mm-hmm. But like Spider-Man 2, there's so much in that movie, like the Sam Raimi one, where it's like, again, visually, it's like I remember so much from that movie. And it's like the only visual I remember in No Way Home is all 3 of them landing together. And it's like, that's a CGI thing. Like it's just like, it's very obvious. It's like, there's nothing that is visually like a spectacle there. So I do love No Way Home, and I think it's one of the better projects that have come post Endgame. But Michael, I totally agree with you. It's like the rewatchability for that. It's like you can only watch it so much before it's like, all right, this kind of feels like, doesn't feel bland, but it's just like, yeah, I get it, and that's kind of how you walk away from it. PJ?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Michael a ton on that. Its rewatchability dips a lot because, like I said, one of the best movie going experiences that first time. It was awesome when you had Charlie Cox's Daredevil pop in. I was like, oh my God, that's awesome, because I love the Daredevil Netflix show. And then you see them landing is awesome when Toby comes in, when Andrew Garfield comes in. It's awesome stuff. But then when you know that's coming, it's like, all right, it's cool. I still like it, but it just doesn't hit the same. So I still enjoy the movie. I would go back and rush, but it's not something I'm craving to go back and rewatch. It also is something doesn't sit right with me that when I think about all of Tom Holland's villains, and I think, okay, the first one is Vulture, great villain. First of all, nothing against him, but kind of feels like more of an Iron Man villain because he has more stuff against Iron Man. Same thing with Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio in Far From Home, and then this movie is all Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield villains. So it just kind of epitomizes that Tom Holland didn't really have a villain in the MCU in my head. But for like the movie standpoint, I still enjoy it. It's just like we said, just the rewatchability and the excitement kind of dips a ton. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is like a top 5 Marvel movie I've seen, and every single time I've watched it, it's like, all right, this is maybe top 10. This is maybe top 15.
Yeah, so it definitely dips in the rewatch. And we talked enough about Eternal, so I feel like we don't have to go through that again. But Shang-Chi, we talked a little bit off camera about at least my own personal viewing experience with that too, I really, really loved how they established. It felt to me similar to what they did with Black Panther, where they established this Asian culture and what came before. And Wenwu, I think that's the villain's name, isn't it?
Yes.
Tony Leung is one of the best villains in the MCU, in my opinion. He's fucking amazing in that movie. He's amazing in it. But that movie sets up so much just to bring you to this, like, again, very like drawl, like action battle scene, and you have awkward moments with Aquafina, and it's just like it sets up so much just for you to, again, similar to something maybe like Quantumania, or like we were talking a little bit before about like Moon Knight. You just leave the theater and you're like, but what? Like, I guess I liked it, but like, why did they do that? Like, why did they end that way? And even the post-credit scene, like, I mean, we brought up the Eternals thing, but it's like, so Shang-Chi knows everybody now? And that hasn't been mentioned at all? Like, since all these movies. So we had a whole show with She-Hulk, where Hulk is in the show, and there's nothing mentioned about this new hero. Like, we had the Marvels, there's no mention of Shang-Chi, and this is a guy that, again, you wanted to sort of push forward. The dude's in Barbie. Like there's enough that you can utilize Simu Liu and like do things with him. And I actually really, really loved his portrayal, especially for a guy that nobody knew who he was before he did this movie. So I'm curious on your guys' thoughts. PJ, I'll start with you on Shang-Chi in general, and like, where do they go with him? Because we haven't heard anything.
That you said before we were talking about it, I had a similar thought as you. I really like definitely first two acts. But then once you hit that big like CGI battle, that we kind of, okay, this is formulaic. This is what we've seen a ton with all these battles. I think the hand-to-hand combat with in that movie is awesome. Like the bus, I wrote down because I tried to rewatch a ton of these movies before hopping on here. And this is definitely one I was like, I need to rewatch this because I liked it. I only saw it the one time, but I want to revisit. That bus scene is, in my opinion, one of the better shot and just looking scenes in like phase 4 or post Endgame, I should say. I was trying to find it there. It just looks awesome, and all the other martial arts combat scenes are great. Like they're fighting on the scaffolding when they go to, I forget what country they went to go find his sister. But a lot of that movie's awesome, and I'm glad you brought up the post credit scenes because also in that he's just Bruce Banner. Like he's not even like Smart Hulk. He's just him. He's like, what happened?
Yeah.
He has the sling on, so it's like, all right, you know, it's post Endgame. He's still messed up from the snap, but like, what? How?
That's a good point. You never find out anything about that.
There's nothing with that. And then even the second post credit scene, which you can visit that later. I'm not as kind of annoyed at that, where his sister takes over the 10 rings. And we kind of just don't really hear anything.
They were supposed to do a Disney Plus show. Haven't heard anything about it since.
I didn't even know they were doing.
They were supposed to, but again, haven't heard anything about it since.
Do we know that they're doing a Shang-Chi too? Because I know the second one.
Yeah, so the thing with that too, and at least like in terms of like you said, Michael, with directors and stuff, like Destin Daniel Cretton, I actually really love him as a filmmaker, and he did a really small indie movie years ago called Short Term 12 that I love. So when I heard he was doing Shang-Chi, I'm like, this is awesome. Also a director of Asian descent, but like. They brought him in, and he was originally supposed to do. I think they hired him to do Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars originally, and then like as soon as the Kang stuff happened, they kind of didn't kick him off the project. It was more like he had an idea of what he was supposed to be going toward. They thought they were doing the Kang storyline, and then I think they came together and they're like, all right, you just go work on Shang-Chi. Like just go do Shang-Chi. And I think he was working on a Disney Plus show that was filming prior to the strike. And then I think they're refilming, but then I've also heard rumors that they're scrapping the whole thing. So I don't know. It's called Wonder Man. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen is supposed to play Wonder Man. And Bob Odenkirk is in that show, supposedly. And it's like, haven't heard anything about that either. So we'll get to that. There's so many projects that we have no idea what's happening. Yeah. But yeah, we don't hear anything about the 10 Rings. We hear nothing about what happened to Bruce. Yeah. So again, just kind of
a lot of things just weren't followed up on.
Yes, for sure. Michael, Shang-Chi.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed Shang-Chi first view. I still enjoy it. I've seen it a few times. And I think it's more so the fight choreography, like you said, that it's some of the best I've seen also as well in the MCU. So I think that's what really makes that movie stand out. I will also argue that a lot of that the cinematography in it, like the scene where he's, I forget what it is. I think it's with his mother. And like they're like in a garden, and like she's like showing him like a certain slow sort of technique of martial arts. I thought that whole scene was beautiful. I thought those were the moments that really hit with that movie. Again, I feel like we haven't seen a lot with them. I know that the Ten Rings themselves and the world of rumors and theories was supposed to be something that Kang was trying to get his hands on first for whatever reason. And so I don't even know how that storyline, like now how much the whole Jonathan Majors thing affects so many other parts of MCU and other projects. I really like that movie. I'm annoyed that we haven't seen more of it. And it falls victim to that whole Marvel keeps just setting up and I should have mentioned this before. I know that we already talked about Spider-Man, but even in that film, like the post-credit scene, they just randomly showed Venom, Tom Hardy, and then and then Venom showing
I think that was a Sony thing.
Like, oh, okay.
I think I don't know. I think Sony was like, hey man, like we're gonna give you all our characters. You better put fucking Tom Hardy in here because we're paying him a lot of money and he's making us a lot of money. So,
but then to leave the Venom in that world is like that's still like a bit. Like sort of setup that we probably won't see again until Secret Wars or something. I don't know.
Which is crazy.
It's really crazy to see it that early. But again, that's I feel like my only sort of concern with Shang-Chi is that it fell victim in that sort of that boat as well. As far as giving us something fairly good, and then just leaving it there.
Yeah,
like not talking
for
about
sure.
It. Yeah.
The next 3 films is I think the sweet spot of mid. So the last 3 films of Phase 4, we go Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, we go Thor: Love and Thunder. And we go Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Now, I want to talk about Thor: Love and Thunder.
Okay.
Because holy shit. Talk about so you see Thor Ragnarok, which some people, majority of people really love that movie. I am also in the majority, but there are some people that don't like it, and they don't like the way that the turn that they decided to take, such a obvious left turn that they decided to take with Thor's character. But Thor Ragnarok to me is a top 10, top 12 Marvel movie. I really, really love that movie. I love the comedy in it. I love how much room Chris Hemsworth has to play. I love Cate Blanchett's performance as Hela is, right?
Yes.
I would say Hera, but it's Hela. So Thor: Love and Thunder, you say it's going to be Thor. It looks like it's like a Flash Gordon sort of thing. You're bringing in the Guardians. They're not in the movie really. But more than all of that, you get Natalie Portman to come back, who said she was never going to do another thing with Marvel ever again. And you get Christian Bale. You get Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher. And the thing is, like, Christian Bale was so obviously in a different movie than what the whole rest of this movie was. And that, I think, is what, like, even in terms of, like, Hela doesn't, there's no comedic beats with her in Ragnarok, but it's played way better. And I think that one was not written by Taika. I think he directed it, but I don't think he wrote it. This one Taika wrote, and he said he was inspired by the comic story of even Jane and the cancer diagnosis. That doesn't play much of an effect in the movie. And I think that there are so many issues with this movie tonally. And it was like the biggest shock to me because I was like, how do we go from Ragnarok to like whatever this movie is? Because I don't even know how to explain it. And again, the whole Gore the God Butcher, you don't even really get God butchering in the movie. So PJ, I don't know if you want to touch on it first.
I think you see him butcher one god, and it's in the very beginning, the one that he sees, and then it's another thing of, oh, we're just gonna flash through all these gods are being butchered after they're on the Guardian ship, and they see all the distress calls like, oh, he's murdering a bunch of gods and whatnot. We didn't see any of that, and it's like, you're the god butcher. Let's see you butcher some fucking gods. Yes. And I really do like whenever Christian Bale is on screen. I think Gore is kind of menacing a little bit. At least that's what I thought. So I liked him that he's just not in it that much. I think he should have been in it more. But the main issue with the movie to me is definitely when people talk about the MCU comedy. It's kind of cringe. It undercuts serious moments. It is not. It's shown no more than in Love and Thunder. You have a cancer storyline, and you're making it sound like a joke, and it's just weird. It's just I also, this is another movie I rewatched because I saw it once. I hated it. And I was like, let me rewatch it again just so I can kind of get back to it. Kind of wish I didn't do that. I really didn't like it again the second time. But yeah, it's the comedy. It's the Guardians also just not being in it because you set it up right after Endgame of, okay, we're going to go on this adventure.
And they market it. They market it as if Guardians were going to be in the movie a lot.
And I get like, okay, Chris Pratt's a big star. Dave Bautista, who plays Nebula? I'm just blanking on the line. Blanking.
Nebula is Karen Gillan.
Karen Gillan. Yes, thank you. I know these are big actors, so all right, maybe they don't have time in their schedules to film a big movie, but you can easily get Groot and Rocket in that movie. You can just get Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel just go in there, record some lines, and then kind of make the movie the same. Like, so it's just a lot of misfiring, a lot of false advertising, kind of like you said. They were marketed for the Guardians to be in there. Just a lot of misses in this movie.
Yeah. Michael.
Yeah, no, I don't even have a lot to say. It was so bad. It was so bad. It was again, I really enjoyed Ragnarok, and so I was a bit taken back as well. I think all of us were. But I don't have much to say. There are just a few things that really that I can point out that just pound the fact that this movie was so bad. From a effects sort of place, you could tell that this movie was rushed. I remember that scene with Heimdall's son.
My God, yeah, that's a complete meme all over the internet.
And it deserves to be a meme because it was so bad. Yeah. it was. I remember just seeing that and being like, all right, how did that even get approved? And that goes for a lot of things that movie did. The Screaming Goat was kind of like maybe if they did it once, I'd be like, okay, all right, so much. They milked a lot. It was so bad. And again, at this point, we could just keep following this trend because every one of these movies has set up something in the post-credit that we haven't seen.
Yep.
They set up the whole Valhalla thing, and you saw...
And Hercules.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, my God, I forgot about that. Yeah. Two major things, because that means that, one, there's basically a world where everyone that we've seen died probably could be, and that's a huge thing. And then Hercules, a whole other story, which... Who knows what's happening with Thor 5 at this point or any of that information or when we'll know that information. So that's all I have to say. The movie was terrible. That's all I got to say.
Do you want to dive into Wakanda Forever or Multiverse of Madness?
I'm going to dive into... I feel like I should dive into Black Panther. I feel like I probably should. I can do that. There is a couple of things I do have to say about Doctor Strange when we get there. Black Panther... I can say that I didn't dislike this movie. I think that there were some good parts of it. I think that what's his name? How do you say his name? Namor. I think that Namor was a big part of it being good, and just that world was a really big part of it. Obviously, there's so much you can do in this film coming off of everything that happened. Chadwick was a big part of this, and so I think so many people were expecting to see him in this film and having him be a big part of it. And I think they were expecting it. And I think that they had to rework a lot of things through that. Not to say that it's noticeable that they had to do that, but it's obvious that they probably had to do that. I'm not against at all Shuri and her character and her performance of Black Panther. Just to me, I think I'm one of those people that love Chadwick so much that it just, to a degree, it didn't hit as hard. It didn't feel the same. And because of that, I can't say I disliked it, but my love for her as Black Panther isn't as much there as it was with Chadwick. I feel like, again, it set up, a potential, maybe we might, see more of Chadwick's son in that after credit. That would be kind of cool. But the film itself, I feel like it was mid. It was definitely mid. It was, I don't know how much of that, again, was because of the things they were dealing with. But it wasn't, it didn't hit as hard as the first Black Panther. For sure. That's what I'll leave it as.
PJ?
I've only seen it once. It's a movie I wanted to rewatch before.
Yeah,
I just didn't
that's the one that I know that when I do return to something, that's going to be the next one I return to. I think is Wakanda Forever.
I honestly probably might watch it after this because I do want to rewatch it because I actually walked out of it being like I kind of enjoyed that. I was very low on Shuri in the first Black Panther and in Infinity War. I just kind of thought she was a little bit annoying. So I was kind of scared going into this that all right, she's gonna be the Black Panther. I know what's gonna happen, and I didn't hate her. I was like, okay, I'm pleasantly surprised that I thought she was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I think I came out of it liking it a little bit more. I liked who's the actor that plays Namor.
Tina Huerta.
I can't say that.
Yeah.
no offense. I'm just not gonna try. But I thought he was good. I'm glad you said the world of with Talokan. That's the
I think so. Talokan. Yeah.
I think it is.
I think it is, yeah. I like that. I like seeing new worlds. I like seeing them explore stuff like that. So I enjoyed that. I don't have too much takes. Like I said, I saw it the one time in theaters. Walked out of it kind of like being like I enjoyed this. It also might have been because I was comparing it to kind of the other Phase 4 MCU movies. I was saying like this is one of the better ones.
Yeah.
In my head. So.
See, that's how I feel. I think that when you look at the phase as a whole, especially the theatrical releases, like that was my takeaway. Like I remember I think I was looking at my top 10 list from because it came out 2022. And I think I was looking at it and I think it was like number 8 on my list of top 10. And then I thought about it and I was like, I don't think that would be in my top 10 anymore. But again, I haven't seen it again. Mm-hmm. But I do remember like the emotionality of which again it wouldn't have happened if we didn't unfortunately lose Chadwick. But I do think the core of what is good about the movie is how they pay tribute to Chadwick, but also like you were saying, the Talokan storyline giving us something new to sort of chew on and something with bite that was different than we have been seeing throughout the phase. Again, I felt similarly to you with Shuri, where I was like not a huge fan of the character. I thought the performance was good, but I wasn't a huge fan of the character, and I didn't love the idea of her taking over. I do think like characters like M'Baku take a little bit of a backseat in this movie, which made me upset because I loved his character in the first film.
Yeah.
But again, like I think it's like a little bit higher than mid. I don't know. It's like it's like something that like I enjoy it for what it is, but it's like I can't even remember completely everything that happened in that movie. I know that a lot of people have issue with some of the fight choreography in it because it seemed like it was rushed. Ironheart as a whole entity, I don't understand why she's in the movie. They just needed a device, I think.
It felt like she was kind of forced in there because they had planned on having a Disney Plus show. Now I don't know.
That whole entire show has been filmed, and there's no release date, which makes me think it's getting scrapped.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. And think about how much money was spent probably on that.
That is, but I mean that also goes with this whole little this whole little other side thing that like Marvel's been like forcing these kids into a lot of these projects to set up the Young Avengers, and so I feel like she kind of again fits in that boat of a lot of mistakes,
but not organic.
But yeah.
Again, like not organic in any way to just shoehorn her into the storyline.
I don't even remember how they did it. To be honest,
I think it's something where like what they have because at the end of the first movie. They when T'Challa's there with Shuri and he's like you can start whatever here in the US like a program and then I think she's an MIT student and that's why it's like Ironheart because she's also inspired by like Tony's works in the past but she also like was a scholarship member of like who fucking knows I'm done trying to figure it out like I'm so done with it. There's too much shit that it's not like and it plays perfectly about what both of you guys are saying where it's like they set up so much with no payoff, and there's no what are we leading to? Like, where are we going with any of this? Do you want to something?
I just want to also say I kind of like the Michael B. Jordan cameo in the movie.
Oh, I agree.
I kind of thought that was cool,
and I agree. I think that was a strong part of the film. And then Multiverse of Madness, like Multiverse of Madness is a very complicated movie. It would be we could probably do a whole podcast on it. Here's my issue with Multiverse of Madness. The screenwriter for Multiverse of this movie pisses me off so much. The screenwriter of Multiverse of Madness wrote WandaVision. Okay? Or no, I'm sorry. That's wrong. That's incorrect. Michael Waldron wrote the first season of Loki.
Yes.
Which we'll get to is one of my Loki as a series is one of my favorite things that Marvel's ever done. And that's recent. So that's great. You hire him to write this movie, you bring in Sam Raimi to direct. And then they haven't seen WandaVision prior to making this movie. And Wanda is your main villain in this movie. And a big, huge plot device of why she's a villain is because she can't be with her kids anymore. Which You don't really know that if you never watched WandaVision, and they shoehorn it in the movie for a very small part, and it does not have any emotion to it, and you're very confused when it happens. And it bothers me that if you're gonna be so self-reliant on interconnectivity, and then you're gonna have your creators just say, that's fine. You don't need to see anything we did before this. Not all 22 projects, but the project that directly leads into this, no, that one that we made and we spent $200 million on it, don't even worry about it. Make whatever movie you want to make. It'll be all good. You want to know why? Because we're gonna have people come, because it's gonna say multiverse, and people like Doctor Strange. So you know what? Make whatever movie you want, Sam Raimi. And that fucking pissed me off to no end, because the more I watch this movie, I'm like, where? And there are sections of it that you can really appreciate, like the horrific elements are as hard horror you can go within a PG-13 Marvel movie. But she's still good in the movie, and there are elements to it like the I do like the relationship that's just, I don't love America Chavez as a character, so to speak, but I like the relationship that they start to bring in with the two of them. Mm-hmm. But there's so much in here where it's like, it's either a bait and switch, or it's like the breadcrumbs where they're like, all right, come on, follow me, follow me. We'll give you a little bit, but then like, you're not going to get anything that you want from this movie. Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel the more I watch this movie. And it just, this is, looking back, this one pisses me off more than any of them, because it's just like, I don't understand what you were going for as a studio. Like, what was your objective with the end of this movie? And then, speaking of fucking post-credit scenes,
oh my god,
Charlize Theron appears out of nowhere, and she's like, "You have a third eye on your head. Follow me." Like, what the fuck? This woman is. What is going on? You're gonna bring in Charlize Theron into the MCU, and she's never mentioned again.
God.
This movie sucks. It doesn't really suck, but like, it's not great. And the more I watch it, the more I hate it. So please revel with me in how much this movie sucks.
Oh yeah.
Either one of you, Michael. We'll start with you.
This movie, I remember watching it, and like in watching it, it was one of those things where I was just like, huh. Like that was literally my reaction. The whole movie was just, huh. And so I remember now rewatching it. There were so many pointless things in that movie. Like that, like I really question, like you said, as a studio, like I guess like they were trying to feed into the fan service a little bit. But as a whole, if you really think about it, it's just like, why did we waste it in this movie? Mm-hmm. I think that a few things, just to touch on the things that you said, especially, like again, yeah, like it's dumb not to watch WandaVision, especially having that one scene in there, and so that scene didn't hit. But then also like to have those little kids singing like that song in it, and I was just like, oh brother, like now what's going on? So like that took me out a little bit more. Certain fight scenes like they were doing that again was just like felt like Sam Raimi just trying to be Sam Raimi, like the whole piano thing where they were in that. Like I was like, this is cool, like visually, I guess, but like why are you playing piano? Like you know, like. It's certain things like that, and then how like the eye was the worst bit.
So weird.
The worst, probably the worst next to Heimdall's son graphics I've seen in a Marvel project. I think it was so out of place, and I don't know. The movie, I can now going back I could say it was bad, and they kind of like juked Wanda's character a little bit. They did. Honestly, they could. The Scarlet Witch, I don't know. I mean, it might not be the end with this whole Agatha project. Mm-hmm. We might see her again. Who knows what could happen. But like this, I think I had a lot of hope for the Scarlet Witch being like a villain, and like
especially post WandaVision.
Yeah, you could see that in the post, especially the after credit scene of Wanda. You could see she was crazy, and I was hoping to see a little bit more of that. You know, she did a lot of damage, and she was still, I think that she played the creepy role good, but like I wanted that villain, that movie to be like a horror. I wanted to see Wanda coming in like ripping people apart. Oh, the other thing I was going to say as far as pointless, like why did we have the whole Illuminati in that? Like that was literally just like a gimmick if you think about it. I think kind of to show, I guess it's like to a degree, because like it showed, like, it added a sense to like how much Wanda would do for her kids, and then killing all of them and all of that, and then the whole like just the tease, like, oh, we have the rights to these characters now, you're gonna see more. But like Why? Like it kind of to me, like I feel like I was a big fan of at the end of Doctor Strange 1, Mordo, I think is his name.
Yeah, Mordo.
Yeah, I think that they could have played a lot with that storyline.
Yeah.
And like I think that he could have, as far as like being just like sorcerers, like that could have been a really cool thing. And I feel like they kind of just like hid that in the whole Illuminati plot, you know, like they kind of just threw him in there and it could have been bigger, but it was a lot going on.
Yeah.
I like they brought up Mordo because we're talking about like a lot of the stuff in post Endgame stuff that's just not followed up on. The Mordo stuff at the end of Doctor Strange, like you said, just not really followed up on. He's hunting sorcerers, and I remember there's just a throwaway line where he's like, "Yeah, I dealt with him in my universe." Never said nothing ever again. I do remember walking out of Multiverse of Madness the first time, being like, I kind of enjoyed it. Just because the fan servicey stuff with the Illuminati, seeing John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic was cool. It was a fan fiction thing that we've been talking about forever. So it was cool, and that's going back to the multiverse in a whole. That's what I wish they would do more. Like I wish that we could have saw in this movie like Tom Cruise as Iron Man, like these fan castings or things that could have happened. I mean, obviously Tom Cruise is a huge actor, so it's not like you could just get him whenever you want. But something like that was cool, and I don't think the potential of this movie was hit whatsoever. And Michael, like you said, the like piano scene, it looks really cool. It's kind of fucking dumb. It's kind of stupid.
It's totally
stupid.
But yeah, and the Charlize Theron thing you said, oh my, that was so funny. The third eye, it's such a big thing at the end of the movie, and then the immediate post credit scene is like, yeah, I can control this thing now. It's no big deal. It's crazy.
It's so insane.
Like you said, he's screaming,
in pain, knees in the middle of New York City. Charlize Theron pops up like, "You're gonna help me fix some incursions," and he's like, third eye pops up like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. Let's hit it."
And we get all these incursions in Loki season 2, and like that's never followed up on either. Like so, Jesus, I can't even. Vinny, just tell me what time are we at?
Yeah, right. We're
What the
we got a lot of TV shows to talk about too.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna cut like when I edit like that point, and then I'll start back on me. I'm just gonna run through all the shows in Phase 4.
Okay.
And we'll just like touch upon them very quickly.
Okay.
Like we don't even have to do every single one.
I watched these shows like once.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. So we're on me, right? Okay. Yep. All right, so let's move into the shows of Phase 4 because we just went through pretty in depth on all the movies of Phase 4, but there were a lot of shows that came too, and this is the order the shows came out. And you have WandaVision, you have Falcon Winter Soldier, Season 1 of Loki, What If Season 1, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, and She-Hulk Attorney at Law. I'm going to start with one that I actually really appreciate, I think more than others. Because I'm sure one of you is going to talk about Loki, or we could just wait until we get to Phase 5 and just talk about Loki as a whole if we want. And Michael and I covered that extensively on the channel. But I really appreciate what they were going for with Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I liked that for the first time, it felt like even WandaVision too, but with Falcon and Winter Soldier, it gave you like a very human side to these heroes. And you got to see like a lot of Sam Wilson's family life, and you got to see where he grew up, and the Zemo stuff. I mean, despite it being like a really fun meme on Twitter for a week of him dancing in the club, like I just really appreciated what they decided to do with that show, especially now knowing that there were so many production issues in terms of like what they had to reshoot. Like the character work in Falcon Winter Soldier, I think is really good. The John Walker stuff, I think, is really good. Now, yes, of course, the power broker thing is another thing that is never touched upon once again, and it is one decision where like immediately as soon as I knew the decision, I said this was stupid. I was like, they just shouldn't have done Sharon as the power broker. But even the introduction, like the surprise of Valentina, Julia Louis-Dreyfus joining the MCU was like, wow, what the hell is she doing here? Like, we're fans of Veep, so it was just like, what's the Vice President of the United States doing here? But so I really appreciated that, and the only thing I wish they dove more into the psychology of Bucky. In that show, like you get that one therapy session, but I would love to see more. And I just love Bucky as a character so much. But this show made me love Sam Wilson, like made me really, really love him as a character. And all the stuff with Isaiah Bradley, I thought was brilliant, like just really, really great writing and great character work. So I really liked Falcon Winter Soldier. It's like actually probably one of my favorite Marvel TV shows that have come out. What did you guys think about it?
I remember watching it and not loving it. I like I said, I like the Sam Wilson stuff. I really like the Bucky stuff. Like you said, I wish they kind of dove into that more because it's very interesting. This guy who had been brainwashed since World War II did all these like atrocities and is trying to re-enter the world. That's a very interesting story to me. And they hit on it a little bit with I don't remember the older Asian man that he was friends with.
Oh, I don't remember either, but that's a good point, and I completely forgot about that.
But that's super interesting. It's like, yeah, I killed your son, or I killed a friend. I don't remember exactly, but like that's super interesting. They didn't really hit on that a lot. I don't really love a lot of the flag smasher stuff. But the stuff I did like, I really like. The stuff I didn't like, I didn't despise. It didn't really hit for me. I only saw it once. I kind of do want to rewatch it again because I did like, especially before Captain America 4 comes out.
Yeah.
With whatever title they go with now, they're on their like fourth title in that movie. But it wasn't one that I loved. Wasn't one that I hated. I did appreciate, like you said, Valentina coming in. In those earlier projects, in the earlier Phase 4 movies, it felt like they were trying to connect her being like the eviler Nick Fury to recruit all these, and we haven't seen her since
Wakanda Forever.
She was in Wakanda Forever. I completely forgot about that. Okay,
you find out that she's married to what's his name?
Not General Ross, Everett Ross.
Everett Ross, which again, and you don't even know what's up with Everett Ross. It's because of the secret invasion. Well, he was captured, but it's like
I don't know.
Exactly. It's all
that's a mess. But yeah, she felt like she was gonna be bigger in terms of the whole universe, and she was kind of pushed away for a while. Wakanda Forever, she pops up, and you haven't heard since. But I did appreciate that they're trying to kind of go that route in a lot of these earlier movies. So
yeah, I liked Falcon and Winter Soldier mainly because of just that realness. I don't even know fully. Like, I enjoyed the character performances in that. I think I enjoyed it more at the time because of the time it had come out, like the release point. I think it was like right after WandaVision. So if I'm not mistaken, so it was like an immediate sort of shift from what we had just seen. And it was cool to see it. I know it kind of felt more like the Captain America movies. I felt like
it fit in that like mature mold of like what the Russo versions of Cap brought.
Yeah, for sure. Like it gave me like a Winter Soldier vibe. I could see in certain elements. I don't think certain performances hit as hard as it did for you guys as it did for me. Like John Walker, I think, is a cool character, and I'm interested to see him more in Thunderbolts. But his performance, I thought, was cool. It just like it was like, oh, all right, it was fine to me. I love Bucky. I love that. And I do really like Anthony Mackie's portrayal of Captain America. I'm worried though. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know, and this is a whole argument in itself. I don't know if Anthony Mackie is lead material,
like a leading movie guy.
Yeah. And so I'm curious to see how his later films will be, especially after seeing this. I could say I enjoyed his performance in this, but this was a tag team. Like, it was Bucky's story as much as it was his with this one. And so, like, I don't know. That's where I'll leave it at. Yeah.
PJ, you want to give your thoughts on one of the other shows?
I was just gonna say, if he just mentions the giant Eternal popping out of the water, I'll give him every award possible just for mentioning it, please.
Yes.
Please do that.
Yes. Oh man, one connection.
Just
please.
one. I just need one. Oh my god, just someone.
It is crazy looking back and thinking about how many loose ends they have.
Right, everything.
It's
Everyone.
so crazy.
Right.
It's so crazy.
Just be like, yo, Buck, you see this giant thing sticking out of the water? All right, let's go back to the leader.
All right.
The villain.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the leader was in it. That's right.
Yeah. What is the title now? Because now I'm trying to think.
Captain America: Brave New World.
Was it New World Order?
It was New World Order at one point.
Another...
Serpent Society was another one.
I forgot that Serpent Society.
Yeah.
Wasn't Serpent Society supposed to be Civil War? They teased.
Well, they yes, but then they originally were going to move it back to this one because I think there's rumors that Serpent Society is going to be in this movie, but who knows? They're also refilming like 70% of that movie too. So anyway, but any shows?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit with Multiverse of Madness, but WandaVision. That obviously being the first project post in Phase 4, I should say. Well, I really enjoyed a lot of that. I thought it was very interesting. Those first couple. I know some people thought the first couple like 50s, 60s episodes were kind of weird. I like them just because every episode you saw something a little bit odd. Like that first episode, I remember the end where they had like the boss and his wife over. They were laughing weird. The tone kind of shifted. I was like, okay, this is intriguing. The beekeeper in like the second episode, like it was good TV to where every episode made you be like, huh, what's gonna happen next? So I appreciated that. I thought Wanda was good. I thought Vision was good. And then the fault is kind of that last episode does not hit. You had the Ralph Boner joke, which is just that's just cringe comedy. The CGI Vision with versus White Vision fight, which White Vision, another thing that's just never followed up on. He's just out there. Like I don't know what.
Another rumored show, but yes, not followed up.
Oh, that's right.
And so, majority of the show I enjoy. I like how creative. I like the creative aspects of going to the homages to other TV shows. Like I had never really watched Malcolm in the Middle. I went and watched the whole show. So going back, this is also one of the only shows I've rewatched.
Same here.
So going back and watching that Malcolm in the Middle type episode, and that intro is like, oh, I really appreciate that. That's really cool. But the fault of the show is that final episode, and then spawns the whole Agatha stuff, which I just don't think is necessary.
Yeah,
like it was a fun tune. It was a fun thing, a fun meme. But I don't need more of her.
Yeah, I'm not really looking forward to Agatha, and I love Catherine Hahn, and I love her in the role, but like that's what you're gonna follow up.
I don't.
Like, all these things they're talking about that they're messing up completely, and they're like, yeah, well, people really like Agatha all along, so let's just we'll play that song every single episode.
When is that show coming out?
That's coming out in 2024.
Okay, I was gonna.
That's confirmed that it's coming out in 2024.
I was gonna say
they don't have a date, but it's coming out next year.
They make the show partially because a lot of people like the song. That's gonna be a 4-year-old song that people like for like a week.
Yeah,
they're transitioning to a whole show now.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Michael, what do you think about WandaVision?
WandaVision is still probably one of my favorite projects that they've put out, and with at least within that phase for sure. But I liked, because that was again one of like the first sort of thing, especially during that time of COVID of being home. It was cool to have it be like a real mystery that you had to kind of figure out, and I really liked how they did it. Because I'm not gonna lie, at first, like other people I had heard, the first 2 episodes I thought were a little boring. Not that they were bad or anything like that. It was just because I was like, what's going on? So I can't even fully say they were boring. I think it was just my own sort of confusion. It wasn't until that moment where I forget what happened specifically in the show where kind of you were like, oh snap, this isn't right. I think she it cut in the middle. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And it replayed, and you're like, did my TV just glitch? And that was the first time I was like, oh, this is cool. Marvel's kind of playing around with that. So I respected that. And again, I feel like it was a letdown in the end. It was not a full letdown. I think that that was one thing that I will say they successfully set up you could work with that. And I know this Agatha project, it's pointless, but I know a big point of even making it is to have her kids come back and to set them up for the Young Avengers. So I mean,
maybe they're setting up something.
Yeah. But that, again, I'm not gonna try and drag it out.
If they set up something with it, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah. The rest of the shows in this phase, though, I mean, again, a lot of just besides Loki, a lot of what if is what if. It's fine. It's I think we thought it was going to have more of an effect on the multiverse because they were introducing multiversal stories in The Watcher, but nothing really. I do hope we get The Watcher in live action with Jeffrey Wright voicing him, because I think that's sick.
That would be cool.
Hawkeye, we talked a little bit before we went on. Hawkeye is another one that's just okay. I mean, it's nice to play around the holidays if you just want some background noise. And the biggest fault with that is that you have a completely different Wilson Fisk than we saw on Netflix. which is tough
Yeah.
because D'Onofrio is so good in the role. But the show is fine. Moon Knight, I think all three of us really, really loved that show up until the finale.
I remember watching that finale and just a complete cutaway of your big fucking there's just is laughing at that. Just complete cutaway from your final fights and then just everything kind of ends.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was so abrupt. Like, what happened? Like, did same thing with like the WandaVision stuff that you were saying, Michael. Did my TV just like cut out? Like, what happened here? We're just not going to do this.
And the weird thing with that is, I remember after the show ended, there were a lot of interviews with Oscar Isaac, which he went on a great tour and talking about the role, and it's awesome because Moon Knight's such a cool character. But they were like, "Oh, like so, like what's coming next? Like Moon Knight season 2?" And he's like, "Oh, I only signed up for 1." And it's like, okay, so I mean, fine. Like I do think Marvel needs more of that. Like in my own personal opinion, like do your own individualized stories that don't have to continue. If you don't want to do that, whatever. But if that is the case and you end on that, how do you go back and look at that series as a whole? And then it's like, all right, so then you're really telling your audience that you don't care. Because in the last episode, you build this whole giant kaiju fight of these ginormous sphinxes and people battling. And then you're right, they completely cut away. They show a Jake Lockley, is that his name? Or
yeah, that's the third alter ego that they set up. And if they are doing one season, it's crazy to set that up too.
Yeah, they set a completely different alter ego up, and then they just leave it there, and we haven't heard anything about it since. So, just crazy. And then you have I was a really big fan of Miss Marvel because again I thought that was just a very good individualized cultural story that again cute, like it was something that's more for the younger audience, but I really loved Aman Vellani's portrayal as Kamala Khan.
I think she's very good as that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, she's good. Yeah.
And then you go to She-Hulk, which She-Hulk was its own disaster in and of itself, and I think it was not for a lack of trying. I think Tatiana Maslany does a good job in the role, but again, it's like you introduce Daredevil, but it's really just for fan service, and Megan Thee Stallion being in the show is really just there to be Megan Thee Stallion. And the finale of that show is like a whole like, but the people that are avid comic readers that I know of are really big fans of the show. So it's apparently very
comic accurate.
Yes, which cool if that's the case, but you know, not for me.
Yeah. I'm not reading those comments either.
Yeah.
At all.
Wasn't this like what was the budget on this show? Because I had heard or I saw that it was like a massive budget, which I'm assuming is all the CGI for the She-Hulk being She-Hulk.
Which also is funny because some of the shots she looks terrible.
Yeah, she's not good.
$225 million.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like,
Producer Vinny just rolled his eyes in disgust.
That's
so crazy.
All
right.
And especially to do stupid things like make like a B character turn into Hulk. Like remember like in the last episode the one guy who was like, now I'm the villain.
Oh yeah.
And he made like,
so crazy.
All like a budget for that?
Yeah. They could be doing better things with their budgets.
Oh yeah.
They also just like poked fun at that entire last episode, just poking fun at what they're doing. Everything's like, there's this big CGI fight. We're gonna have two CGI characters battle each other. Haha, look at that. That's so funny. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And I think about like, yo, you're doing that in a lot of these movies. You did that with like WandaVision, you did the Vision and White Vision. Like you've done that so many times.
Yeah. And then the thing is like all of these projects, especially the last few we brought up, like they all had their own production issues. And that was another one where I think they brought on the director who thought she was going to have her own vision. And then they basically just had the writer on set every day. And they were like, no, like whatever she says is what you're going to do. And it's like, why are you bringing these people in these positions then if you're not even going to
trust your people?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. That's all of Phase 4 as quickly as we can go through it. And that took so long. So sorry if you're still listening. We hope you are. So Phase 5, really quick. This is what we have so far. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels for film, Secret Invasion, Loki Season 2 for TV. There's still things to come, and What If also just dropped, but I don't think any of us are completely up to date on it.
I watched like the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I've only watched one.
I haven't seen any of it yet.
There we go.
The rest of this phase, this is according to Wikipedia. So the rest of this phase is what's supposed to be coming still. You have Deadpool 3, that's dated. We know that's coming out. It's the only Marvel film in 2024. Echo is coming out a week after this launches. So Michael and I were going to be covering it on the channel, but I'm curious because I'm actually starting to get very intrigued by what I'm seeing. But
me too.
it's interesting. Agatha Darkhold Diaries, also on its 5th name, is getting released at some point in 2024. And I believe the 3rd show is going to be the X-Men 97, the animated X-Men show. We're going to be getting on Disney Plus as well. And then, like we said, Deadpool 3 is coming out in July of 2024, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
And then now pushed to 2025 because of all the production issues is Captain America: Brave New World. Really quick, I mean, we touched a lot on, I think, a lot of these movies already. Quantumania, we all thought was pretty mid. Some issues in terms of CGI and the way they handled that. We all love Guardians here. We could talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think.
Yeah,
I think we should go in that direction.
Yeah.
But Marvel's, one of us on the panel hasn't seen it. I didn't like this movie. Michael didn't see it. I didn't like this movie at all. PJ, I think, thought it was a little bit better than...
I went into it because you texted me before I went to go see it. You said that there were, first of all, I want to point out, you said there were 2 of the dumbest scenes you've ever seen. I would know immediately. I did know immediately.
Yep.
It was very stupid.
Really poor decision making by whoever decided that those 2 scenes should be in any movie ever made ever.
Let alone a Marvel movie.
Yes.
But I texted you, and this is part for shock value. After the movie, was like, oh, I kind of liked it in Invisible Ink. What I meant by that is I didn't hate it, I think, as you did. I thought all 3 leads kind of worked well together.
Love their chemistry.
Yeah, like I really like Amon Vellani as Miss Marvel. I've never seen that. I was not a big fan of Brie Larson whatsoever in Captain Marvel. I liked her a lot more in this movie. So I think it was more just I went in with the lowest of expectations, and I was like, I had fun in some parts. It's the villain stinks. I still don't know what the villain's name is. I don't remember.
I don't either. Yeah, that's literally how
I imagine upon any rewatch I do, if I will do it because I'm just like that. I'll probably dislike it a lot more. But coming out of that first watch, I was like, I thought that was gonna be much worse, and I was like, I had a little bit of fun with it. It was kind of short too, so I was like, oh, it's not.
Yeah, it was one of the shorter projects.
And the post-credit scene was something to just get excited about.
Significant. Yeah. Something very significant. But still just felt like a very interesting time to put it in. Like it makes sense, but
that I know what it is. So that
I know you got that spoiled. But
I agree. Yes.
And then like the TV shows. I mean, I don't think we need to go into detail of this, but Secret Invasion is probably the worst show they've made. Right?
Might be the worst project they've done.
Yeah.
One of the worst things they've ever done. And that's sad. The thing that bothers me the most about that is don't attach such a historically great comic arc to something that is as bad as this is.
Yeah.
That bothers me the most.
Definitely.
I heard this said somewhere. This actually makes a lot of sense. What they should have done with Secret Invasion was make that like the Phase 4 storyline. Because that is such a huge thing in the comics. Of our heroes like War Machine, Don Cheadle, Rhodey. I could not think of the name for a second. Is obviously like a big character who's been there since the beginning. And having him be a Skrull, it like should be like a very big thing. Now it kind of fucks up any of the emotional stuff from like Civil War or Endgame or any of that stuff. But regardless, that should be a bigger deal. And it's in this very shitty show. But
it doesn't have any emotional weight to it
none,
because it's in a bad show too. It's like poorly written.
Yeah, none whatsoever. So I think you could have done that as the Phase 4 storyline, had an Avengers movie around that. Because I do think that not having an Avengers movie kind of hurts
for that long. Yeah,
it does hurt that interconnectivity a little bit, where it's just something to build towards. Yeah. And everything else feels like it's just like there's not really a defined direction. I think having the Secret Invasion stuff, you could sprinkle it in all these other shows to kind of make it a bigger deal. So that's my main issue with just Secret Invasion in general. Because I think we said before, we were talking about this before, not during, right? That the first 2 or 3 episodes was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I'm interested to see. And everything after that is just, oh my god, so bad. And Emilia Clarke with that big Drax arm is seared into my brain as one of the stupidest visuals I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And why would you try to condense a storyline like that into 6 episodes where, again, nobody is shown, essentially? Like the only characters you bring back from all these projects you've done over the years is Rhodey, Nick Fury, Talos, and Everett. Like that's your big play.
Maria Hill also just dies.
Maria Hill also dies in the show.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
How crazy is that? That's Nick Fury's right-hand woman since the beginning of the MCU. She's dead, everyone. Did you watch Secret Invasion? I bet you didn't. It fucking sucks. So guess what? Newsflash, Maria Hill's dead. You're never going to see Kobe Smulders in anything ever again in the MCU. Fucking Jesus, guys. What are we doing?
Oh,
Fuck.
Oh, man.
All right. Sorry. I had to get that out.
No, that's fair.
I was feeling all that. Secret Invasion sucks, man. Let's talk Guardians. Let's try to end this on a high note before we go into what's to come. We have Guardians Volume 3. We have Loki as a whole, right? Michael, I want you to start. Either one you want to talk. I mean, we talked about Loki super in depth on the channel, but either one you want to discuss.
I feel like I said my piece with Loki. Go watch that. All of those episodes. What's it called? And though I feel like I'm trying to gather fully my thoughts with Guardians. Guardians, I feel like, is a perfect example of how to successfully end a project. I feel like it's also, I feel like a lot of other films and directors need to take a lot of inspiration in terms of how to properly tell a character's story through Guardians. Like, I feel like that's one of the best examples I could think of really focusing on these characters. And I feel like Guardians 3 alone with Rocket it's something that I wasn't fully expecting. I knew that they were trying to touch on that topic. I didn't think it was going to be as hard hitting and make me bawl my eyes out as it was, but it definitely was that. And I do, this film not only I can confidently say was one of the better films of 2023 and of the what we've seen so far. I could say that this cemented it's James Gunn. I don't know why I'm like forgetting names. It cemented James Gunn as I can confidently say that he should be doing superhero films. He should be attached to it. He should be. And I'm gonna leave it at that just because I feel like, again, that is something that I'll wait till the end of this conversation to address. But James Gunn, I feel like, is going to play a big role in the fate of Marvel, to be honest.
Interesting. That's a nice closing thought to
Yes.
sort of preview. Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
PJ, because we talked enough about Guardians, but I mean, like, I don't think we've ever had a really full, we usually have a lot of very full in-depth conversations about Marvel. We haven't done that in a long time because these projects aren't great. But Guardians overall, what did you think?
I loved it. I came out of that being like, the first Guardians is so good. I don't love the second one as much. I still think it's very good. But compared to these two, I don't think it's as good. I think Guardians 3 is the best Guardians movie to me. I came out of that, I was crying. The Rocket stuff is so emotional. It's so great. I know I'll butcher his name. Who's the villain? Or what's the actor? I know it's the
Chukwudi Iwuji.
Yeah, I get another name. I'm just not gonna try because I'm gonna butcher it. He's so good.
Yeah, very good.
He's the best. He's the best villain of Phase 4 or Phase 5. It would be, and the post Endgame, I'll say. Just everything. It's very classic Guardians. I like how they brought in the Gamora stuff without it being without it being forced, without there being like, oh yeah, she's just back now and they're all a family again. It's like, no, that's not the same Gamora. That's not the same character that died in Endgame or in Infinity War, excuse me. It's a completely different character. She has a new family now, and I like how they didn't try to shoehorn it in. James Gunn is great with those characters. I am cautiously optimistic about seeing Star-Lord come back. 'Cause I know they said that he's coming back. They set up the new Guardians team with Rocket, Groot,
Warlock,
yes. Which Warlock was interesting. I'm curious to hear what either of you have to say about Warlock, because he was that was obviously something that was teased many moons ago in Guardians 2, and we just got a follow up on it. I thought it was okay. That was
That's like my only flaw with the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Is the not even because I think his introduction is great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it just became a point where it was like, again, which I do applaud Gunn in the fact that he's not the type of director to be like, I set something up, so let me just leave it there now.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I have to introduce this character. I literally teased it at the end of Guardians 2. But I thought that, and I actually like Will Poulter in the role. I just thought that there was so much there that it just like left more to be desired. Like I felt that if we weren't going to get the full extent of who Warlock was, then I really didn't need to see him yet. Like I would have rather waited. But again, like respect to Gunn for trying to just be like, no, I'm not just going to be like every other Marvel project. Just put something out there and then never go back to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I loved Guardians too. I've been going back and forth whether or not I like it more than the first one. I think they're both amazing movies, and I agree with you. I do really enjoy the second one. It's not on the same plane
level.
for me.
Yeah.
Which again, like the one thing that I do love about 2 is Yondu's death is one of my favorite scenes in the whole MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Gunn was able to top that emotionality and the I mean, just tug on your heartstrings with the Rocket storyline, man. Like, oh my God, it's so tragic.
Mm-hmm.
It's so heartbreaking. It's so devastating. And Michael, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're going to allude to, but I definitely have more. Like, it's crazy to me that despite all the things that DC has gone through, now that Gunn is in charge, I have more confidence in where they're going to go versus where Marvel is right now because of all this shit. And that's probably what you're going to talk about. So we'll wait on that. But it's just like, it's just great. It's like, I would have never imagined right after Endgame that this is where we would be. Yeah. And it's like, you're coming off the Justice League stuff in the DCEU and you didn't know what was going to happen there. And I don't know. It's a weird thing. And then Loki, I mean, PJ, we've talked about Loki a lot, but I am curious, just really quick on your thoughts on the series as a whole. And I mean, how amazing Hiddleston is as Loki.
Yeah, like you guys already talked about. Go watch their where's the camera? Whichever one. Go watch their Loki review. But I love Loki. It's my favorite. It's always my favorite TV show that they've put out. It's one of my favorite post Endgame projects. Sans all the outside stuff, I think Jonathan Majors Kang in when it was the He Who Remains in season 1, He Who Remains in season. I didn't. Victor Timely was a little hit or miss. I still thought he was good, but He Who Remains is the best Kang we've had by far, I think. And there hasn't been that many, but still. That final scene of Loki going back and going the loop to back to the Palace Beyond Time. What was it called?
Place Beyond Time.
Place Beyond Time.
Yeah.
It's something close to that. I've rewatched that exchange between Loki and He Who Remains. Has to be about 20 times. I really, really fucking like it. It's just, I don't know. It to me, it's just like two really good actors acting their fucking ass off. And then I like how it sets up. Loki's just the most powerful being in the universe. It sets up. You don't have to come back to him if you don't want to. You can just kind of leave him be, because I do think it's a good wrap up of his character, a great character arc. But I do imagine that he's going to show up in Secret Wars. So I'm excited to see a little bit more of him, which would probably be the last of him, deservingly so. But if we don't, I'm glad with where they left off. Loki is a show I will rewatch like a ton of times.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to rewatching it.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to move into final thoughts and just sort of where do we go from here. And I want to start with you, Michael, because you've been patiently waiting on this point that you want to make. So please, I'm very curious on your thoughts on James Gunn's role going forward with the impact that's going to have on the MCU.
I believe everything that we've seen from both sides, Marvel and DC, have been very much on purpose leading up to this moment. And I feel like, all right, let me get into that a little bit. I feel like DC, we all know their start that they had. I feel like they had a few good movies, but for the most part, the DC extended universe was a fail. It was a big fail. Marvel, when they started, Jon Favreau, Iron Man, obviously was amazing, and they kind of like. It's not like the movies after that were bad, but they hit the ground running with it, and they like never really had a bad period, like you could say. So I genuinely believe that James Gunn, now coming off of working on Marvel projects and creating a name for probably one of the biggest franchises in the Marvel side, and what he's done with the Suicide Squad already and Peacemaker already, and his plans. I don't know if you've seen or heard a little bit about Superman Legacy, but the casting is pretty, it's not bad. Not that bad. I believe that everything that we've seen has genuinely been on purpose. I think that DC needed a test run, and that's exactly what it was. I feel like it was a test run that Marvel didn't get because they were already kind of thrown at it. They were doing good, they had the platform. Now, like you said, and you hinted at, the tables have turned. It's like Marvel is now in a place where they needed a test run with certain things, and certain things that they're doing need a proper test run, let's just say. And DC already had that. And James Gunn, I feel like, is going to now come in and push the DC universe in a place much further than Marvel. I wasn't confident with that before. I do think that after seeing where Marvel is now, and after hearing some of the things that Marvel has to that they plan to do, I genuinely think that we're watching now a fall off, rise up sort of situation. And I do think that moving forward, we are going to see some of the most comic accurate stuff that we've ever seen on the DC universe's side. I don't know. I do think that, again, we're going to see a fall off with Marvel. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of having to do that. I do think that in terms of just moving forward, we're going to see probably a hard reboot sooner than we were anticipating. I personally do think that, because they're already hinting at bringing in old characters that have already died off and everything, and hinting at that, things like that. I don't know, but I can say that moving forward, I am for the first time more confident in the DC universe.
I think that's fair. I think it's also fair because there's, like, it's weird, like you're saying, like there's a legit blueprint now on how to do this the right way. And Gunn, despite the fact that Guardians might be a worser film, the Guardians 2 is a worse film than the sandwich films in between. There's nothing about that movie that is like poor. No. Like it's still a well-made movie. It just doesn't, it's not as good as the other ones are. And he's such a comic fan, like a real comic book fan. And that's the thing where I think it gets complicated with Feige. It's like, I do think Feige still has the ability to flip this. The thing is, there are things out of his control that what is he going to do? Like, he's not in control of the fact that Majors did what he did. He's not in control of the fact that their biggest hero in Marvel Comics is Spider-Man, and they don't own the rights to that character. And it's not like Bob Iger right now and Disney is going to go out and buy Sony. Like, they're not in a position to do that. That hard reboot that you talked about, I think, is definitely going to happen. And I think the real thing is that, and a big part of the reason we're just getting these breadcrumbs, and the only thing we know as of now is we're 95% sure that Pedro Pascal is going to play Reed Richards, but that's not confirmed yet. It's just a report. But Fantastic Four and X-Men control the whole narrative of what is going to happen next. And PJ and I are in a group chat, and we were mocked by two of our friends. So Matt and Zach, if you're watching, we apologize. I apologize. PJ might not, but I'm apologizing on my behalf. Because they were like, Zach especially was like, where are you going to go with these characters? He's like, if you lose the core guys, like what, like there's nothing about Doctor Strange, or there's nothing about Kamala Khan or some of these characters that they're good characters, but like, where are you going to build a story based on the backs of these types of characters? It's not a Robert Downey Jr. as Tony. It's not a Chris Evans. And that's my issue with the Young Avengers thing. It's like, I do understand that you're trying to establish these young people to lock in for years and years and years and years to do all these projects because they're not established yet, and whatever you want to do. But that's where I worry. And that's why my last thing is the next two films that come out are huge for me. You have Deadpool, which it's their first run with Deadpool, and if they're going to decide, and everything that I've heard and I've seen is great. I mean, there are nods to a lot of MCU projects. The rumor is that it's Deadpool and Wolverine goes and kills the Fox universe. And if that is the case, then boy, will that movie be a joy to watch. And with Reynolds being in charge and Sean Levy, who they have such a great rapport now, and he's a great filmmaker, I have confidence in that. Brave New World is the one where I was like, even hearing about it at Comic-Con, I'm like, this is a very interesting take. Bringing in Harrison Ford, I'm excited about that. But man, you start to hear these production issues, and it's like, what is going on at this studio, man? Like, why can't you guys get control of movie making anymore? That's what scares me. And to Michael's point, it's like you have James Gunn for the creative side of DC, and then you have Peter Safran for the business savvy side of DC. And having two guys, and Feige, it's obvious he's stretched too thin. Like, I agree with you, Michael. DC's in a better place. I'm not ready to give up on the MCU yet, but I'm hanging on for dear life. That's how I feel.
Yes. Also, to add to that point, also that you just reminded me, James has vendetta now with Marvel because of the whole So at this point, I think that's a
little overblown, but I can understand where you're coming. He's like vengeance. It's all about vengeance. No, but because the thing is, like, I do believe and it's weird because on one side I do agree with you where it's like I do think he came back to do Guardians because they probably begged him to come back, and also I do think he's such a creative. I don't want to say. I mean, creative genius is so overblown, but he's such a great visionary that he wanted to finish his story, and that's ultimately why he came back into Guardians 3. He like swallowed his pride for the fact that he got fired very publicly, and it was a huge issue to come back and finish the story that he wanted to wrap up. And it's showing because like Dave Bautista's going to come over to DC, and Zoe Saldana's probably going to come to DC, and he's already going to do Jason Momoa as Lobo. Like he's got the respect of actors. That's obvious. But the other side, I do think that there are a lot of people at that company, and he learned so much from Feige that I don't think it's like, we're coming for your next Marvel. I think he wants to see them succeed, but I think he is also aware that like a lot of the films that are not made by me or the Russos at this studio, I'm not a huge fan of because he doesn't talk about them as openly. You know what I mean?
There's got to be just something just as a filmmaker, you want your films, and especially if he's like heading up all DC, he wants his stuff to just be better. That's just a competitive nature of any human being. But I think I agree more with you. I don't think there's like a cutthroat like, oh, I'm coming for your ass, anything like that. I do wish a what if episode would be crazy of a what if they just never fired James Gunn. What if that just didn't happen? Like, would he ever go to DC? Because like he would have never made the Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
none of that would have happened. Like he would never dipped his toes into that water.
He might have been the next Avengers director.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah,
we could have this entire post Endgame MCU could be okay. This is James Gunn's vision of what we can do next, and it's a weird what if. I just think about it a lot. Like what if that happened? But yeah, with Marvel next, like DJ said, it's all contingent on Fantastic Four and the X-Men. I'm very excited for this Deadpool movie. The little tease like as in the Marvels. Weird placement, but still got me like excited to see. So I feel like I'm more of just an optimist because I know how good they could be. I know how good they were, and they have been in the past. If Deadpool flops, if Fantastic Four flops again, like this is also if Fantastic Four flops, you could just never use those characters again because that would just be 3 iterations of just terribleness. And if the X-Men are just not as good, then man, I don't know what happens.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We're in a weird spot.
Very weird.
That was a long conversation. We talked about a lot of things. We covered a lot of ground in a long period of time. I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation talking about all the things that came post Avengers Endgame and with the MCU Phase 4 and Phase 5 and a little bit of a sense of what's to come. I mean, again, we have one film project coming out in 2024 with Deadpool 3. We have 3 Disney Plus series coming, Agatha, Echo first, and then X-Men 97 is going to be coming out on Disney Plus as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Please, if you guys don't like this video, and be sure to subscribe to our page, hit the bell for alerts. You can follow us at Cinema Wave Media on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Threads. You can also follow us at _Culture Wave Media and at Jersey's Finest Pod on Instagram. Just signing off. I am Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Michael Peniston.
I'm PJ Benella.
And we'll see you guys next time.